Imagine building this state-of-the-art multi-million-dollar robot, right? You design it perfectly to solve a very specific ecological problem. You drop it into a swamp, and almost immediately, a completely different animal just wanders over and eats it.
Just complete trashes it.
Exactly. That, in a nutshell, is what happens when we try to engineer reality.
Hmm.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are exploring the wild, unpredictable systems that basically govern our world.
Yeah, we're drawing on this really sprawling, totally unscripted conversation from the Joe Rogan Experience featuring comedian Brian Simpson. And what emerges from all that chaos is this fascinating map of human adaptation.
It's crazy because it jumps from biology to crypto scams to, the deep cosmos.
Right, but beneath all those tangents is a really clear look at what happens when humans try to outsmart complex systems.
Yeah.
We think we have all the variables locked down, and the system just inevitably bites back.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with our attempts to manage the natural world. Because we love to tinker with ecosystems, we see a problem, we throw technology at it, and we just assume nature will sit there and take it.
Which it never does.
Never. Case in point, the Florida Everglades. So, they have this massive invasive python problem. The traditional methods, like paying hunters or using tracking dogs, they just weren't scaling up.
Right, so human ingenuity steps in, and scientists decide to deploy these highly advanced robotic rabbits.
And these weren't just basic decoys, right?
Oh, no. They were engineered to emit very specific thermal signatures to mimic, a live mammal's body heat. And they were doused in the synthetic rabbit scent.
Which makes sense. I mean, the logic was sound. Pythons are ambush predators that rely on heat and smell. So you lure the snake to the multi-million-dollar tech and you trap it.
Brilliant on paper. Absolute disaster in practice. Because an ecosystem isn't a controlled laboratory.
Right.
The robot rabbits did attract predators, but the heat and the scent brought in alligators instead.
Which is it's hilarious in a dark way. An alligator doesn't care about the R&D budget of your fancy decoy. It just crushes the expensive machinery into scrap metal.
Yeah, it's like trying to fix a bug in software code, but the bug evolves into a cute feature to stop you from deleting it.
Exactly. But what's fascinating here is what they actually learned before they had to shut the program down.
Right, because they ran all the peripheral tracking data through an AI system, which revealed a network of what researchers call swamp highways.
Swamp highways.
Yeah, the pythons weren't just wandering randomly, and they certainly weren't falling for the decoys. They were using highly specific, scent-marked routes on the higher ground to navigate the Everglades.
Wait, so they were intentionally using these highways to actively avoid the alligators?
Yes. Our absolute best, multi-million-dollar predictive technology was completely outsmarted by a snake simply knowing which local road to take to avoid a gator.
That is wild. But, wild animals outsmarting us in a swamp is one thing. It's a whole other thing when they move into our neighborhoods.
You're talking about the raccoons.
Yeah. City raccoons are reportedly evolving shorter snouts and, quote-unquote, cuter features.
Well, natural selection is ultimately about finding the path of least resistance. And in a dense urban environment, the apex predator is us.
But we are a highly emotional apex predator.
Exactly. If a raccoon looks a little more domestic, a little more like a pet, human sympathy kicks in.
Right, and that sympathy translates into an incredibly caloric survival resource, like a half-eaten bagel tossed on the sidewalk.
Yeah, they're literally domesticating themselves to exploit our psychology.
Which completely mirrors that famous Russian fox experiment by Dmitry Belayev. Over 60 years ago, he took this population of wild silver foxes and bred them using only 1 metric tameness.
Right. If a fox showed aggression, it was out. If it showed affection, it was bred.
And within just a few decades, which is practically a rounding error in evolutionary time, their bodies completely transformed.
It's amazing. Their snouts got shorter, their ears became floppy, they even started wagging their tails.
Just from selecting for friendliness.
Yeah, it's driven by a genetic mechanism called pleiotropy. When you aggressively select for a specific behavioral trait, like low adrenaline and a lack of fear, you inadvertently drag a whole suite of physical changes along with it on the genetic level.
Wow.
The biochemical pathways that reduce aggression also happen to dictate things like cartilage formation and pigmentation.
Wait, I'm stuck on this idea of pulling one biological lever and accidentally pulling, 5 others. Aren't we doing the exact same thing to ourselves?
Oh, absolutely.
Ooh.
We treat the human body like a machine with isolated parts all the time.
Yeah, we pull one string to fix a problem and completely ignore that a totally different part of the web might just collapse.
We constantly attempt to isolate the magic ingredient. Look at the current obsession with reversing age-related vision loss.
Right, using red light therapy.
Yeah, highly targeted red light therapy combined with macular support nutrients.
Mm.
Some people report completely eliminating their need for reading glasses.
And what's the actual mechanism there?
It relies on cytochrome C oxidase in our retinal cells, absorbing specific wavelengths of red light, which supposedly kicks the mitochondria into overdrive to produce more cellular energy and repair the tissue.
So it's a super targeted intervention. But the moment we apply that isolation mindset to our vices, things get deeply weird.
Yeah, take the massive cultural shift away from combustible cigarettes. I mean, it's an industry still generating roughly $76 billion a year.
But we've tried to isolate the nicotine for that cognitive dopamine boost, right? Just without the tar and the smoke. Which leads us to modern vapes and nicotine pouches.
We essentially remove the natural friction. You don't have to go outside in the cold to smoke. You don't smell like an ashtray.
So without that friction, people are just constantly hitting vapes all day long.
Yes. And the infrastructure supporting this optimized vice is staggering.
Hmm.
There's this factory tester in Vietnam whose entire job, literally, his assigned shift, is to inhale from 7,000 to 8,000 disposable vapes every single day.
Wait, 8,000 a day?
Every single day, just to test the airflow and battery activation before they get boxed up and shipped.
He's essentially acting as an industrial lung for the global market. That is horrifying.
It really is.
But speaking of smoking, Dr. Stephen Gundry has this highly controversial theory. And we really have to frame this carefully because mainstream oncology completely rejects this.
Right. Smoking is undeniably a leading cause of premature death and cancer.
Exactly. But his argument is strictly mechanical. He looks at certain blue zones, like in Sardinia, where there is a high prevalence of heavy smoking among men who still somehow live past 100 years old.
Right. And his theory focuses on how nicotine acts as a mitochondrial uncoupler.
Oh, what?
A mitochondrial uncoupler. Think of it like putting your car in neutral and revving the engine. You're burning fuel, or in the cell's case, calories and energy, but the car isn't moving.
Okay, I follow.
This uncoupling process is theorized to reduce cellular wear and tear. Gundry suggests that because these centenarians consume massive amounts of polyphenols.
Like from local olive oil and plants.
Exactly. Those powerful antioxidants from their diet act as a heavy biological shield.
So the body's web is so complex that an extreme, localized influx of antioxidants might mechanically offset the extreme toxicity of inhaling smoke.
That's the theory. Again, a highly disputed theory, but it perfectly illustrates our desperation to find biological loopholes.
And the terrifying part is that pathogens are hunting for loopholes inside of us at the exact same time, like that super syphilis outbreak in the Michigan and Washington areas.
Oh yeah, that is a perfect example of a dynamic system outmaneuvering our interventions. We tend to think of antibiotics as this static, permanent shield.
But bacteria are evolutionary machines.
Right. In this case, a super spreader was simultaneously infected with two entirely different strains of the syphilis bacteria.
Because those two distinct strains were occupying the exact same host environment, they underwent genetic recombination.
They basically swapped DNA plasmids inside this guy's body.
Mutating into an entirely new, highly aggressive strain that attacked the eyes. It caused rapid vision impairment and blindness, and he spread this ocular superbug to 5 different women before intravenous penicillin finally stopped it.
It just highlights the illusion of control.
Huh.
While we are busy trying to optimize our mitochondria with red light or isolate nicotine in a little pouch, microscopic organisms are casually rewriting their own source code inside of us to evade our defenses.
Which is the perfect parallel to how humans operate in the financial systems we invent. I mean, just like a parasite mutating to exploit a biological host, humans relentlessly exploit the underlying code in our digital economies.
Like in the cryptocurrency space.
Exactly. Let's look purely at the math of a modern pump-and-dump event, using the recent Trump meme coin launch as our data set.
And setting aside the political branding entirely here.
Right, purely the mechanics, because a modern pump-and-dump doesn't just rely on hype, it relies on the mechanics of liquidity pools.
Yeah, when a new token launches, it gets paired with an established asset like Ethereum or US dollars in a smart contract.
Okay.
The price of the new token is determined by an automated market maker, which is just an algorithm that constantly balances the ratio of the two assets.
So when the initial hype drives the price of the coin from roughly $1 all the way up to $75 in a matter of hours, it's not that everyone holding the token suddenly has 75 real dollars backing it.
Not at all. The insiders who hold a massive percentage of the initial token supply, they just wait for retail buyers to dump real money into that liquidity pool.
And then they sell.
Then they sell. But they aren't just selling a token. They are actively draining the real cash out of the pool. As they extract the underlying value, the automated algorithm crashes the token's price to compensate.
And within 5 days, the price collapsed back down into the 30s. Roughly 800,000 different digital wallets collectively lost around $2 billion.
It's staggering.
$2 billion evaporated from regular people, leaving them holding computationally worthless code, while a select few walked away incredibly wealthy.
And the manipulation of these unregulated interfaces gets even darker when it's aimed at vulnerable populations. Scammers are deploying fake cryptocurrency trading apps, specifically targeting the elderly.
Just exploiting them completely.
Yeah, the interface is purely a dopamine trap. The victim deposits real retirement funds, and the app is programmed to show a continuously rising, entirely fabricated balance.
So the victim logs in, sees their wealth multiplying, and naturally deposits even more.
Right, but the money never actually went into the market. It went straight to the scammer.
And when the victim tries to withdraw their supposed profits, the app hits them with exorbitant early withdrawal fees,
demanding more real cash to release the fake funds. The whole system is designed to financially bleed them until they realize the entire app is just a simulation.
It highlights a glaring failure in our regulatory systems. I mean, we have unregulated meme coins and fake apps wiping out billions with virtually no immediate legal consequence because it falls into this massive gray area of consumer protection.
Yet compare that to the U.S. Special Forces soldier who placed a $400,000 bet on the prediction market, Polymarket.
Right. This soldier bet on the timeline of a highly classified military operation to overthrow Venezuela's leader, Nicolas Maduro, an operation he was personally involved in.
And for that, he is facing decades in federal prison for wire fraud and violating the Commodity Exchange Act.
The contrast is just crazy.
Well, the law isn't inherently optimizing for fairness. It optimizes for what the state prioritizes. The soldier inadvertently broadcasted classified movements to a public betting market, which threatened operational security and military secrecy.
So the system reacts with overwhelming force to protect itself.
Exactly. It all comes down to the environment you are operating in. Author Malcolm Gladwell analyzed this perfectly when looking at the famous Hatfields and McCoys, the feuding families in Appalachia.
Oh, right.
Gladwell points out that these families descended from European herding cultures. If you are a farmer, stealing your livelihood takes time. You have to actually harvest the crops.
But if you are a herder, a thief can steal your entire flock in a single night.
Exactly. So in the absence of centralized law enforcement, survival required establishing a culture of honor.
Which basically means a reputation for immediate, overwhelming violence in response to any slight.
Right. The violence wasn't random. It was a highly optimized survival strategy for that specific environment.
So whether it's an Appalachian herder using violence to protect livestock, a soldier navigating the strict bounds of military secrecy, or a modern scammer using fake apps to drain liquidity pools, humans will just mold themselves to whatever the system rewards.
We push against the boundaries of our biology and our economies all the time. But those boundaries become absolute, impenetrable walls when we turn our attention to the distant past and the deep cosmos.
Human comprehension genuinely starts to break down here. Let's look at the ancient past first. Researchers have been conducting scans beneath the Egyptian pyramids using ground-penetrating radio tomography,
which is the exact same technology used to successfully map underground particle colliders in Europe. You pump low-frequency radio waves into the ground.
Okay.
Solid limestone reflects the waves back at one speed, but empty voids or dense metallic structures reflect them back differently, which creates this subterranean map.
And what they are finding isn't just a hidden tomb. The tomography is detecting massive, inexplicable structures underneath the Giza Plateau. Giant pillars and columns, surrounded by what look like coils, descending over a kilometer deep into the earth.
It's wild. It suggests the pyramids we see might merely be the capstones, like the visible tips of ancient technological structures that we just lack the context to understand.
It completely upends the timeline of human engineering capability. We are walking on top of anomalies that suggest a level of sophistication 4,500 years ago, or perhaps much earlier, that rivals our modern capabilities.
And if the ground beneath our feet is a mystery, the sky above us is genuinely terrifying.
Yeah, the new Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope is about to fundamentally change how we see the universe. It's offering the same incredibly high resolution as the Hubble Space Telescope, but with a field of view that is 100 times larger.
which allows us to hunt for exoplanets on an unprecedented scale. But the faster we survey the universe, the more we find objects that mathematically defy our models.
Like TON 618.
Yes, astrophysicists are currently looking at a quasar called TON 618. It is powered by a supermassive black hole with the mass of 66 billion suns.
66 billion. Our entire solar system could fit inside it with room to spare.
But the size isn't even the main problem, it's the timeline. Black holes grow by pulling in matter through an accretion disk. And there is a physical speed limit to how fast a black hole can eat, known as the Eddington limit.
Right, because the outward radiation pressure of the consumed matter pushes against the inward gravitational pull.
Exactly. So given the estimated age of the universe since the Big Bang, TON 618 simply hasn't had enough time to consume enough matter to get that large.
It's like finding a fully grown ancient oak tree in a garden you just planted yesterday. It shouldn't exist.
But TON 618 is just a single object. If you want an anomaly that induces a true existential crisis, you have to look at the Great Attractor.
Oh, this one is unsettling. There is a region in intergalactic space exerting a gravitational pull so massive that it is drawing our Milky Way galaxy, along with roughly 100,000 other galaxies, toward it at a staggering speed.
And the truly terrifying part is where it's located. It sits perfectly within what astronomers call the zone of avoidance.
Because it's completely obscured behind the dense dust and stars of our own Milky Way's galactic plane.
Yeah. We are being pulled into the dark by a giant invisible magnet, and we are functionally blind to whatever is waiting for us.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the Great Attractor is just a symptom of a universe that is actively erasing its own history.
Right. The universe isn't just expanding. That expansion is accelerating. And eventually, the expansion of the universe will outpace the speed of light.
Meaning the light from distant galaxies will no longer be able to bridge the widening gap to reach us.
Exactly. Billions of years from now, if a future civilization on Earth looks up into the night sky, it will be entirely black, save for the stars within our own immediate gravitationally bound local group.
They will have zero visual evidence that the rest of the universe ever existed. They will construct their entire science, their entire philosophy, around the mathematically sound but entirely false conclusion that they are alone in an empty void.
Their reality will be completely erased by the mechanics of the cosmos.
Think about that the next time you get stressed about a deadline at work. You are hurtling toward a giant invisible anomaly alongside 100,000 other galaxies in a universe that is quietly preparing to turn the lights out forever. Your inbox can wait.
It really is a humbling perspective. Our day-to-day attempts to engineer and control our little environments seem incredibly small when you zoom out to that scale.
So true. Today, we've explored how complex systems consistently defy our attempts to control them. We looked at ecological interventions where multi-million-dollar robot rabbits ended up as alligator food. We saw the horrors of hacking biology, from pathogens mutating to evade our antibiotics, to a guy inhaling 8,000 vapes a day just to test the airflow.
We examine the harsh logic of our economic environments where liquidity pools are drained of billions in days while regulators enforce military secrecy. And finally, we looked at the absolute boundaries of our knowledge, from kilometer-deep structures under the pyramids to physics-breaking black holes and the inevitable isolating expansion of the universe.
We are a species desperately trying to map a reality that is constantly shifting beneath our feet and constantly rewriting its own rules. Which brings us to one final thought to leave you with.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about how urban raccoons are currently evolving cuter, shorter snouts to manipulate human sympathy for food. They are actively domesticating themselves to survive in our modern, concrete environment.
So if a wild animal is rapidly changing its physical face just to survive the world we built, what psychological or physical traits are humans unknowingly evolving right now?
To survive the bizarre, high-stress, digital attention economy we've trapped ourselves in, are we domesticating ourselves? And if so, what exactly are we turning into? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep questioning the systems around you, and watch out for the robot rabbits.